section on class test at 11:20. So now I'm not going to know. So I'll see you guys outside. I'm in the JDK getting a presentation. You have two options. You can stay here and practice, or you can come find me. Those are your two options. It's just like, if we were in the middle of class, I would have been like, okay, I don't know, just go. But it's just like, oh, it's Friday.
We could have got somebody to teach it.
Yeah. Into a brain, on 7.
Yeah, it's true.
I think he wants to see the presentation, but I thought about it. He's like, where's your presentation? Where's your presentation? He's like, oh, it's at 11. I was like, oh, he could totally do 11.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the 11 o'clock session of Director's Talk Shop with the Director's Workshop. I'm excited to introduce Mr. Johnathan Strayhan, who I met the summer after his 7th grade year.
8th grade.
Summer after his 8th grade year, here as a camper, and I've known him ever since. And one of his high school director's description of Johnathan is as good of a musician as he is, he's an even better leader. And if you heard the Team A performance where they played Heston Dorma, had a lot of solos on that performance, and it was like first year, I think, on that concert. Yeah, great musician, even better leader and teacher. I've had the opportunity to watch him. This is going to be year 4 of his teaching career, and I've seen him. That's mine. Sorry. I've seen him teach at least once a year throughout this. Well, probably 3, 4.
Yeah.
I was there a lot throughout his career, and it's just few people have I seen start as strong and then grow as fast in every way. So I think you're going to get great stuff. Great euphonium player. Now was at Pascal High School, but now at Trinity High School in HEB in Dallas. Please welcome Mr. Johnathan Strayhan.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for the edification, Dr. Tavalite. I came to this camp for 5 years. First year was in Dr. Tavalite's band. It blew my mind, and I said, man, I've got to come back. There's no way I cannot come back to this camp. And I'm super glad that they now offer a band director's workshop. So very honored to be here speaking to you today. We are doing Euphinity and beyond. It is definitely Toy Story themed after the Buzz Lightyear. And I tried to get Buzz Lightyear playing a euphonium flying through the air, but ChatGPT would not have it. Copyright law would not budge at all. So I had to settle for the actual euphonium flying through the air with the Buzz Lightyear-like wings. So the goal of this is to cover 6th grade or whatever year you start teaching euphonium. So first year euphonium teaching, plus a little bit more, a little bit beyond, but it's primarily going to focus on that first year, and then there's going to be some, okay, what happens after that first year, what happens getting into high school, what happens, kind of what materials do we give them, what are some things we should be focusing on, where do we want them to be during that time, okay? So a little bit about me. I spent 4 years teaching at Pascal High School. It is a Title I school, 64% economically disadvantaged with a large minority enrollment. You can read all the different types of minority enrollments there. We had 3 feeder middle schools, but only really kind of one main feeder middle school. And the reason that I'm sharing this with you is to let you know that I come from a variety of backgrounds where I've seen homogenous teaching, where at McLean Middle School, it's a triple C. We have a 6th grade campus where I teach a euphonium class. I get 6 to 8 euphoniums every year, and I teach just euphonium. So we get to move pretty fast because it's only euphonium. And then Daggett Middle School is a double C. Daggett Montessori is a single C. And in those settings, they are heterogeneous, where it is just a brass class. I go to Daggett Middle School weekly. Every Tuesday, I go down there, and I get to help with just all brass. So they've got tubas, euphoniums, trombones, and trumpets in there. And so we do some team teaching. Sometimes I pull out the low brass. Sometimes I pull out the high brass. Sometimes I teach the whole entire group. So I have experience just focusing on euphonium, but I also kind of know what it's like to try and teach euphonium when you're also dealing with trombone slides hitting the ground all the time. This year I'm moving to Trinity High School, which is similar. They have 2 feeder middle schools and then one kind of split feeder. Still not super sure about the middle school, like 6th grade situation with them, but it is one of the most diverse schools in the nation. It's actually the most diverse school in Texas, public school in Texas. So moving forward, I have this as a disclaimer. Results may vary, and that's just because everyone's got a different situation. Like some of you, like I said, are teaching homogenous classes where you get to focus on those 6 or 7 or 8 euphonium only kids, and that's great. But if you've got a heterogeneous class and you're dealing with trumpets where you're trying to buzz for euphonium and the trumpets start buzzing lower because they're trying to match the pitch that you're buzzing to them, like, I get it. So you will move a little slower if you have a heterogeneous class, but the goal is we may not get as far, but we still are going to sound great. And I always tell those heterogeneous classes and those teachers, I say, don't try to catch up to McLean. You're not going to. Those classes are going to move faster. If you have a heterogeneous class, it's okay that you don't get as far as us, but we want you to send them to the next year being really set up fundamentally with their face, making a really beautiful sound. That way, whenever those kids do get in a situation where they get some one-on-one time, they can really, really thrive. Okay. Moving on, this is kind of what we're going to go over today. We're going to talk about some equipment. We're going to go over just the basic skills, kind of how I teach embouchure, how I teach buzzing, how we introduce it, how we use it, first sounds, tone, and then getting into slurs and articulation. And then we get into a kind of a calendar overview of like, okay, you taught me or you showed me how you do all these things, but when do you do them? Like, when's the right time to do that? So I have a year at a glance of like month by month, and in the first couple months, like week by week, of kind of when I start introducing certain things. And then we get into the beyond, which is after 6th grade. So hopping right in at equipment, I think the most important thing for equipment is just that everybody's on the same thing. And I'm not even in a situation where I've been able to give all of my students the same exact brand euphonium or the same exact size mouthpiece or the same bore. Jolette Wine will come in and she'll listen to my euphonium class and she goes, are they all playing on the same thing? And I go, not really. And so we kind of work things around, try to get them close to the same thing. And so we found that the students that were playing on like large bore euphoniums as 6th graders didn't sound as good as the euphoniums that were playing on small bore as 6th graders, or the ones that had 51D mouthpieces as a 6th grader compared to a 6.5 AL as a 6th grader. And so we'd go down the row and it was like, yeah, they all sound different because they're all on different things. And I used to be of this ideology of like, well, if you can hand a tuba to a kid and they can play a tuba and play, make sound into a big tuba mouthpiece, then they can play on a 51D. Give a 6th grader 51D. Sure, go for it. And it just didn't work out as well because those 6th graders can't use as much air. They haven't been trained to use that much air. They haven't been doing it for that long. Their facial muscles aren't developed yet. So the 6.5 AL allows them to still make a great sound and have a lot of control on the instrument, even though the face isn't as developed and they're not using as much air. So there's a lot here. The biggest thing is I try to go for a 6.5 AL small shank for all the beginner horns and make sure that they're on small shank euphoniums. As for the type of instrument, I love the Yamaha euphoniums. If they're in 6th grade, they can be on a 3-valve. It's even better if you can get them all on 4-valve. They don't have to have the side action. They can all just be on top. But getting them used to that pinky, oh my gosh. All of my 6th graders, as soon as we start doing 6th position, it hurts, it's hard, oh my God. And they will whine and whine and whine. And I just don't, it's okay, you'll get used to it. It's okay, you'll get used to it. It's fine, you'll get stronger, it's gonna get stronger. And they hate 7th position. They hate it. And then like 2 or 3 months later, they're like, hey, remember when I couldn't do that 7th position thing? I was like, yeah, it got stronger. They're like, yeah, that's easy now. And so my first year teaching, I was like, oh no. Like, maybe, is it too hard for them? Do I need to give them a 3-valve euphonium? And then once I got halfway through the year, I was like, oh, they're just weenies. They just complain, right? So they get used to it. They get better at it. And it's okay to commiserate with them and go, I know it's weird. I know it's going to feel really bad for a while, and your fingers are going to get tired, but you're going to work through it, and you're going to get really strong. And so try to keep them away from doing 1 and 3 instead of pinky if you have a 4-valve. As we get up into 7th grade, the YEP 321 is a really great 4-valve euphonium. If they're advanced, I would say let's start moving up to like a 51D if they can handle it. I moved to like a 51D small shank whenever I was in about 7th grade. So you can kind of scaffold it whichever way you feel the need to. The goal is to get them to that advanced level where they're playing on a 4-valve compensating euphonium, and I'll go over compensating euphoniums here in a little bit. I have on here avoid Jupiter or King, simply because they don't slot concert F very well. Like when I play a concert F on a Jupiter or a King, it feels like there's a lot of resistance. It feels like I've got my valves pushed halfway down, and it just feels really, really funky, and it doesn't center the pitch super well. And I feel like I have to work really hard to get it in the center. Again, the Yamaha 321 still works for weaker players once they get into 8th grade and above. Orion has a really, really affordable Pro Euphonium for like $1,900, $2,000 that is modeled after the Yamaha 642. Mac Brass, the EU 1150S, is also a clone of the Yamaha 642 at a way more affordable price. But if you can afford it, Best and Sovereigns are great. Prestigious 2051s, 2052s are great. The 2052 is larger. And it's going to be a little bit more in tune, and then obviously the Yamaha 642 and 842 Pro models. And so by the time they're in 8th grade and above, hopefully they're advanced enough, they're playing on a large shank mouthpiece. We want to get them onto that 51D as soon as possible. And then moving past that, if they feel like maybe some students have really large lips so they don't have enough room to kind of move around within the instrument, getting like a 4G or moving on to like some Stephen Mead mouthpieces that are a little bit larger. But alternatives, a Bach 5G or a 4G is great. A 4G is going to be a little bit big, but if a student comes to you and says, hey, I just feel really boxed in and limited by my mouthpiece, a 4G is a really, really great option. So moving on.
Can I ask you something?
Go for it.
Can you share these slides with me so I can share, not right this second,
Oh,
but like
yeah.
afterwards?
Yeah,
and
of
then
course.
I'll share it out to everybody?
Yeah.
Because I'm guessing
Yeah,
you'll
there's-
write all this down.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's going to be a QR code at the end
Perfect.
that takes you to a PDF of this.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, I probably should have started with that. There's a lot of information in all of this. So moving forward, a lot of people freak out about compensating. All you need to know is a compensating euphonium is more in tune. Okay? It has extra valves and extra tubing, not extra valves, extra tubing that makes it more in tune. And they're compensating are always 4-valved euphoniums. Now, 4-valve, not all 4-valved euphoniums will be compensating. And this is how you know. This is a compensating euphonium, and you can see all the extra valves, extra tubing here. You got one here you can pull, one of those you can pull, and it's lots of extra tubing, extra tubes that help make the instrument more in tune. This is going to be a non-compensating euphonium. See how it's just the straight line tubing, there's no additional tubing. Again, for comparison, compensating, and that's where you look. You look on the back of that valve cluster, and that's where you're going to be able to know. Because a lot of people go, well, it's got 4 valves, it's compensating. Not always. Okay, so you look on the back of those valves. If you start seeing stuff like that, it's compensating. If it's, too far. If it's just that and it's bare, it's not going to be a compensating euphonium. And the reason we want that is that extra tubing just helps it be way more in tune. Okay, it helps with 5th and 6th harmonics a whole lot. All right, so getting into sort of those individual skills. So starting with embouchure, I used to tell my kids all kinds of stuff. I'd go over corners are firm, chin is flat, teeth are apart, all this stuff. They're doing all this stuff. We haven't even made a sound. We haven't even held the instrument. We haven't even held the mouthpiece. And they're getting bombarded with all this information. And then we start trying to hold the mouthpiece, and they're like, oh, are the corners firm? And then it's just a million things to think about. And so what I've gone to recently is I tell the kids to make a hot soup face. So imagine you're eating some hot soup. You've got a spoon of hot soup in front of you. How are you going to blow on that hot soup? And odds are, most of the time, it gives you a pretty good brass face. My corners are pretty firm. My chin is somewhat flat. If anything, the lips might come a little bit too far forward. You may get that kid that goes, but like, who blows on soup like that, right? And so you get it for that kid, that may not work, but you go, okay, you're kind of puckering the lips, bring the lips a little flatter, closer to the teeth, and it'll bring it in a little bit. So that's kind of where I start. As I say, make your hot soup face, because we want natural, we want relaxed. We don't want them to overthink everything and be too mechanical with it, because that can lead to just tension in the sound. I give them corners firm, and we do this whole chant and everything, but when you're getting ready to put the mouthpiece on the face and make the first sound, if you tell them too many things, they get overloaded. So I start with just hot soup face. Let's get that looking pretty good. And I go around, I check every face, and I go, okay, your corners can be a little more firm. Everyone make sure your corners are firm, And so I'll kind of tell them, okay, we make the hot soup face, but these are the things we want to look for. And I'll tell the kid, hey, make sure your chin is flat, and we'll kind of pet our chin or kind of put our finger right here, move it back and forth, and I'll have them feel a really wiggly, soft chin. Now make it a little flatter against your teeth. See if you can get it to not move so much. Yeah, that's a flat chin, or they pet their chin. But I don't go, these are the points that you all need to have, right? So I kind of fix as I go, and when I do that, I say, hey, everyone, make sure that your chin is nice and flat. Make sure it's not wiggling too much right there. Brass face. And that's what I call it, is your brass face. I go, show me your brass face, and we practice it every single day. And they have mirrors, and I can't say enough how much I think mirrors are a really great tool, because I can show them my embouchure and my brass face, but they don't know if they're doing what I'm doing unless they have a mirror in front of them. So we have these little mirrors that kind of hang on their stand. That way they can look at me, and they look down at the mirror. Like, they look at me, they look down at the mirror, they go, whoa, that doesn't look the same. How can I get my face to look like Mr. Strayhan's, right? And it's crazy. Those kids are brilliant. They will self-correct, and lots of times the information you have to give them goes down 50% just because they now have a tool they can see themselves now. With embouchure, as we begin playing, we continue to refine that, and so this takes us into buzzing. There's a lot of information. So the way that I introduce buzzing, first we have to teach them how to hold the mouthpiece. So I just do 2 fingers and a thumb by the shank, and this is a big one. I go slide angle down. I talk a lot about how you want to anchor on that bottom lip, and you don't want to press on the top lip. I was a top lip pressing kid, and no one told me for the longest time, and it made life really hard. And so I'm a big proponent about anchoring on that bottom lip. And so we go through this whole thing when we set up our like embouchure and everything. It's a call and response where I go, show me your brass face, and I go, corners are firm, chin flat, teeth apart, lips soft and touching, more pressure on top or bottom lip, bottom, slide angle, and then they respond down. And so it's a lot of call and response. And as I do that, I tell them, like, when I say corners and you say firm, you should then firm your corners. And so it gets like more distorted as you go. So it's like corners, firm, chin, flat, teeth apart, more pressure on top or bottom lip, bottom. And it's kind of a silly, fun thing for the 6th graders. So moving into buzzing, I like to use a boba tea straw on the shank. I feel like if we just start with mouthpiece to the face, it's so easy for kids to try and force a buzz out of it. And the boba tea straw provides that resistance. That way you can get an easy buzz from it without them having to press or pinch their lips together. So I really, really like that. And we do air to a buzz. So this is a big thing that helped me a lot. I used to do all that stuff. We'd set up our face, and then I was like, oh, I gotta teach them how to breathe. Okay, everyone, breathe through your corners and make sure everything stays still. And Jolette Wine finally came out. She said, why don't you just have them breathe through their nose in the beginning? I was like, well, isn't that like bad? Isn't that like looked down upon? She was like, no, you just put all this work to set their face up. Have them breathe through their nose so they can keep their face super, super still so that their face stays still and they make a really great sound. Because I can't tell you the amount of times that we'd set up our face and we go, okay, breathe through the corners, and we go, and then their face totally dissolves. And it's like, oh my gosh, okay. And so in the beginning, we set up the face, we talk about how we hold the mouthpiece, we hold it up, and I go and I correct every single mouthpiece, and I go, okay, no, slide angle down, do 50-50. And when we get ready to do air and make a sound, I go, you're gonna breathe through your nose, and we go, and we start with air. And I tell them, I just wanna hear air. I wanna hear that sound of the air moving through the mouthpiece. And that kid that doesn't use as much air, what I do for them is I take a piece of paper, I put it in front of their mouthpiece, and we'll do the paper check. Guys, I love the paper check because you'll tell a kid, like, use more air, and they're like, whatever. Like, I'm using enough air. He's lying. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And I use that paper and I start going down the row. It's like, oh yeah, you got it. Yeah, nice. And they start blowing that piece of paper with their air. And then it gets to a kid who's not moving the paper, and they're like, oh no, everyone else did it, but I didn't. Like, it's tangible proof that they're not using enough air. And so you'll get to that kid who's not using enough air, and all of a sudden they're sitting up taller and they're taking a bigger breath because they don't want to be the kid that doesn't move that piece of paper. So that's a really, really great tool. So we do air, and then we do air to a buzz, and I talk about we keep the lips nice and soft. We just bring them slowly together to get an airy buzz. Just an airy buzz, and of course we have the boba tea straw and everything, and I'm not listening for a certain pitch. I'm working on embouchure, I'm refining airy buzz, and it may fizzle out after a couple seconds. I go, yeah, take a bigger breath, see if you can get that to last even longer. And then whenever we start to refine that, they get more comfortable, then we start to add the metronome. And then one thing that I do with that, so I'll hear the class, we'll do it a couple times, there's no metronome involved. I go, okay, breathe in, they breathe in through their nose, air to a buzz. They get the buzz, and we go, okay, do it again, big breath in, do it again. We do that maybe 2 or 3 times, and I start hearing individuals. I'm gonna hear one individual, I'll give them a little bit of feedback, and then I go, hey, everyone apply that thing I just told that one student. Everyone try it. We do it 2 times. Then I go to the next student. Okay, everyone try that 2 times. Because I've done it before. I'm like, one student, next student, next student. And then you get to the end, and like Tommy, who's 13th in line, we haven't even had a chair test yet, hasn't played in 20 minutes because you've only fixed like 8 kids. So I try to go individual, and then whatever feedback I give that individual, we apply to the class. And just going back and forth. And then these key phrases that I talk about, I talk a lot about being still. Stay frozen, keep your face super still, no wiggles in the sound. I talk a lot about chin up, don't press on the top lip. And then the thumb pressure trick, I learned this from Travis Whaley, who's going up to Colorado now. He was teaching at Summit in Mansfield. They showed me that if you take the top fingers off, you can still buzz. It's like, dude, that's crazy. So I started using that with my students, and I tell them, and you're like, you told 6th graders to like balance it on their thumb? Yeah, we put the thumb right by the cup, and we lift up, and we let it balance, and they try it. And then I find that throughout the year, as we're doing our buzzing routine, they check themselves because they don't want to press on their top lip. I have kids that in May will do our buzzing routine. They lift up their fingers and they're checking it all the time. Super great way for them to realize, oh, I really don't need to press into my top lip. Like if I've got everything set up and my lips are nice and soft, I should get a buzz from that. So that's been a really big game changer for me. And then again, start with air first. A lot of kids will, once you start making a sound, they'll go and start immediately with that pinched buzz. And I go, no, I've got to hear air first. Do it again. It has to be air to a buzz. The air is the most important part. Right? And then again, just with refining embouchure, I will fix like firm corners, flat chin, say O to get more space in between the teeth. Imagine that there's like carrots between the teeth, like your molars or more space between your molars back there. Correcting aperture, we'll do like bring the lips closer to the teeth, farther from the teeth, make the air skinnier, make the air wider, hug the air more, stuff like that. Moving on, buzzing continued. So eventually when they get really comfortable, I work into steady sounds. And that's when I start talking about no wiggle. See how steady you can make that sound. And we have the kids actually do a homework where they go home and they are to buzz 10 or 20 lines. And they need to write as a line what their buzz did. And I tell them, you know, the goal is for them to get more steady. But if your buzz goes, I want you to write that. You need to document that. And it's just a participation grade. You go and you do it, and it's practice, and it's them trying to get it steady. And the goal is they need to get it as steady as possible. Now, if you come and you have crazy squiggles, you're still going to get a 100. You practiced. You went home. You did it. And so it's just for them to start opening up their ears to, oh, the sound does change. It goes up and it goes down, and can I get it steady? And what does it feel like to get it steady? And I talk to them about how do we make a steady sound? And I will demonstrate, like, if I move my body around. And I was like, why was it unsteady? Like, well, you were moving your body around. And then I start moving my face around. So I give them those demonstrations. I was like, well, why was that not steady? And we have a conversation about what creates a steady sound. And then they start going to, oh, well, I really do have to be still. No wonder you've been telling me to be still. My face does have to be still. My air does have to be really steady. I can't like let my air change all the time. And so eventually we do add a drone for us to match pitch, and we use these sirens that we're about to get to match those pitches. So we get into sirens, which helps us build embouchure control, and then it allows us to access new range on the instrument. So I always use sirens to access a note and buzz up to a note before we ever start playing a note when we start building range. So we start with sirening down, just like it says on the slide. We center the center of the lips. We soften the center of the lips. The aperture gets larger. Lips come forward, get farther away from the teeth. I always talk about here that air has to stay the same because they will fake a siren down by just using less air. They'll go. And technically, the pitch got lower, right? But they also got softer, and nothing really changed in their face. So I tell them, you can't fake it. You have to use the same amount of air, and if anything, I want you to get stronger. I want you to be nice and loud on that low end of the instrument, or low end of the mouthpiece. Because a lot of students will just start doing lip slurs and base it off of, well, low is less air, high is more air. And that's not technically correct. They're not building the correct muscles in their face to be able to do that. Sirening up is the same thing. We blow the air down, we blow the air farther, and then aperture gets smaller. That's kind of like the 3 things that I tell them. So what are the 3 things? And I have them say it back to me eventually once we get it learned. It's we blow the air farther, we blow the air down, and the aperture gets smaller. Now, if you tell a 6th grader, make your aperture smaller, they're going to look at you like you're crazy. They don't know what that means. And so things that I say for that are bring the lips closer to the teeth, hug the air more, make the air skinnier. Sometimes I'll say, like, think like a laser beam, like 60 mile per hour, 90 mile per hour, cold, fast air. And so to build this skill, we do some hand painting where we'll take our middle knuckle and put it to our nose and pull it away a little bit. I have the kids blow about a quarter size in the center of their palm. And I say, okay, now with your air, see if you can get your air to go and angle down to like your wrist below your wrist. So we kind of paint the hand with the air, and then we come back up to the center, and then we see if we can go even, can you kind of get an underbite and make it go higher? And we use that as a gauge of can you do it? Can you feel it? Because they don't know. They can't totally see everything. They can't feel everything. So that's a sign of, oh, my air is actually going lower. I can feel it on my hand. And then we start using these sirens to match the pitch with the drone. So I'll do the drone, I'll demonstrate that for them, and I'll kind of siren down into it. I'll say, hey, raise your hand when I'm matching the drone. And then some kids get it, some kids don't, and then we kind of work on it. We have them do it, and we find that, that matched F with them. So this is my siren progression of what I use throughout the year with my sirens. So we start F, and we'll do just a bunch of Fs. Can you get it super steady? Then we start doing F down to B flat, and we kind of go back and forth, and that's kind of the beginnings of our slurs. Then we do B flat back up to F. We work F up to high B flat, and we'll do that for a couple weeks before we ever play a high B flat. And then we'll do a high B flat steady, work high B flat up into D, D super steady, and we'll do that before we ever even play a high D. Like sometimes we're doing it a month and a half before, because it's just like they're still wanting to press those, so they're still wanting to force a whole lot. And then again up into high F. And then at the end, every single time of our buzzing, we do a full siren, which is your lowest low to your highest high, and then back down. So we go, ah. And in the beginning, it's super teeny tiny, and it's really small, and I demonstrate like a massive one, and I go, hey, is your siren gonna be as big as mine? Some are like, yeah, no, I've been playing for like 14 years or something. Like, there's no way yours is going to be as large as mine. I said, that's okay, but your goal is for it to get larger every day. Like, you want your siren to grow and get a little bit bigger every single day, and that's kind of how you gauge the range that you're accessing on your instrument. Let's move on. So, working on to first sounds on the instrument. As a euphonium player, I kind of overlooked teaching how to hold the instrument. It was just something that I was like, oh yeah, you just hold the instrument. You have a question? Yeah, and I'll kind of talk about that with first sounds on the instrument. So like we do the buzzing to center on the F, hoping that most students are able to get an F when you make your first sounds. Some students are going to get an F, some are going to get a B flat. But definitely you want them to get the F. If you keep them on B flat too long, then they're going to kind of get like tuba face, and they're going to be too soft and too open and too relaxed. And it's going to be really difficult for them to start to engage their corners and get that smaller aperture to work up to F. Some students don't get the F, and we have to kind of meet in the middle, and we'll like eventually move to D. Or as we start learning our first 5 notes, like we'll start learning like E flat to bring the F down, then we'll start learning C to bring the B flats up. Because like if you can get the F, normally those students can also get the B flat. And so we'll kind of like work together to merge them, and then those B flat students can use those first 5 notes to kind of climb up to that F. But yeah, if you have a Jupiter, like we have Jupiters, we had some Jupiters, and it's just, you just kind of have to deal with it. I don't prefer it, but the students, that's all they've known. And so it works, it's just not my preference. But yeah, I would still definitely try to start on F and get them on F. So first sounds on the instrument. So like I was saying, I kind of overlooked the holding position a little bit, because it was just like, it was really natural to me. And so for that one, I just have them set it on their left leg and then tilt it over, and then sometimes you gotta mess with the angle here, but the key with it is just making sure that the mouthpiece still comes to their face the same way as it did when they were holding the mouthpiece. Because lots of times they'll put it on the instrument, and all the instruments have like different like lead pipes that some wrap around more, some wrap around less. So finding that right angle where they can bring the instrument up to them, and they're not, it's not too far down, it's not pressing on their top lip, but it's gonna be a little bit different depending. Like for me, we had like three different styles of euphonium, so everyone kind of had like a different holding position, and then all the kids are different heights, right? So if they need to, like, they need to get a towel to set the instrument on, because it's really hard for a 6th grade euphonium to just like lift up the euphonium, and that's a lot of extra weight for them to be thinking about, and tension in their shoulders while they're trying to stay relaxed and make their first sounds. So same thing, we do air to sound, and like I said, some get an F, some get a B flat, and we use the siren skill to help them get to the F. So if they're low and they're on the B flat, by this time we've been doing some sirens, and so I go, okay, siren up. How do we siren up? And they go, oh, you blow the air farther, you blow the air down. I said, yeah, you make the air a little bit skinnier, make the hole a little bit smaller. They go, oh, okay, and then they'll kind of work their way up to B flat. And some of them get it, some of them don't. Some of them need a little bit more air. And so it's the same process of refinement where I model it. I let them know this is what I want you to sound like. They kind of try it. They breathe through their nose and they make their sound. And then we start hearing individuals and refining that and refining their face. And then really refining their tone. Specifically for beginners, their tone is super scattered and then none of the pitches are centered. So I try to help them find the center of the F. That way they're not buzzing low or buzzing high. And modeling here is so important so that they, just like they could see my face and they could look in the mirror, when I model with my tone quality, that's what they've got in their head of what they're trying to sound like. And so things that I listen for tone quality, open and resonant versus pinched and stuffy sounds. So if a kid maybe has too much pressure, they're pressing really, really hard against the top lip, something I'll do is I'll kind of like tap the edge of the bell and pull it away from them. And if they're like death gripping it to their face, then it's like, okay, yeah, you're pressing on your top lip, like you're just in general pressing too hard. But if it comes away pretty freely, that lets me know that they're not too tense with that. There's not too much pressure on the face. Pitch, again, I just talked about that. Is it centered? Is it still? And I talk a lot about the tone box. Once we start adding the tongue at the very beginning and getting our steady sound, I talk about the tone box. And I say your tone needs to reflect like a rectangle. It needs to have a really steady start. It needs to be steady in the center and then a clear ending. And I say I don't want a tone triangle, and I'll draw like a triangle. I don't want you to start really quiet and then kind of like grow into it. I don't want you to start really loud and then get softer. Like whatever volume you're going to start, you need to start that volume, or whatever volume you want to be, start that volume and then sustain that volume all the way through. And I look for tension, especially in the very beginning. I want low shoulders. I want relaxed eyebrows. So many of my students care so much, and I'm sure your students do, and they're kind of tryhards, and they want to be good, and they want to please you. And with that comes, I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to be so good at this. And that just creates like a natural tension. Like their shoulders will go up. They're stressed. They're sweating. They want to make a good sound. They want to make you happy and they want to sound really good on their instrument. But sometimes that manifests as just additional tension. And sometimes I'll notice that and I'll go, man, you're working really hard. Are you a tryhard? Yeah, I was too. Sometimes when you're kind of a tryhard and you care a whole lot, you get a little tense. Like lower those shoulders down a little bit. I can tell you really, really care, but just relax it out a little bit. And so that's a way of me acknowledging that there's some improvement needed, but noticing effort, right? Hey, you're working so hard. You're trying so hard, and I know that you really, really care. Just really make sure that you relax those shoulders out. And then I talk a lot about like eyebrows, like face tension creeps into like our slurs and our sounds. I go, relax those eyebrows. What are you doing? Like we don't use eyebrows to play lip slurs. Like get your eyebrows out of your lip slurs. This is something I'll tell my high school kids, and they always laugh at it. And then I always tell the kids, I say we play our instrument. We don't work our instrument. If you look like you're working really hard, odds are you don't sound the way that you want to sound. It should be relaxed. It should look kind of effortless. So I talk a lot about that. Moving into tone refinement. We eventually move into breathing. I do teach breathing out of the corners and everything. And so we'll start some days, if I feel like they need it, we'll start with the shank between the teeth. And we go. And obviously there's a metronome. We'll do like in for 2, out for 4, in for 2, out for 4, and that gets the teeth apart. And then I go, okay, now let's flip around. Let's do air, keep the teeth just as far apart. One thing I saw Stacy Dunn do, it's the chewing gum model while playing. And this is always super weird, and the kids feel really awkward with it. But it's when you're playing, if they're really pinched and their teeth are really close together, I say, okay, this is gonna be weird. You're gonna sound terrible. Act like you're chewing gum as you're playing. And you go. Like, yeah, weird, right? Super silly. Say, okay, now you get 2 chews and you open up. And you go. And then their eyes go, whoa, I've never sounded like that before. And so that's sort of a unconventional way of getting them used to moving the jaw a little bit. You don't want the jaw to move while they play, but if a student is playing with their teeth super, super closed, we've got to do something to get those teeth apart. And if we've tried the carrot between the back teeth, and we've tried opening up the teeth, and we've tried the finger, and we've tried the shank, and that doesn't work, sometimes you just have to get them used to experimenting and sounding a little bit silly for them to discover something new. Sometimes students they're afraid to try something new because they don't want it to sound bad. You go, we're all learning here. You're going to sound silly. You're going to sound bad. What's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to go, hey, try again. Right? Like, what's wrong with that? And then tone models, so listening to professional euphonium players, like in class 1 day a week. or while they come in, I'll play like solos or duets for them. That way they know what a professional euphonium sounds like. And then the air trick with the paper trick to get them to use more air. Some students just need to use more air. So we get back on mouthpiece and I go back around with a piece of paper and all of a sudden they start using way more air. They sound a whole lot better. Moving on, so slurs, we use our sirens to work into slurs. So when we first start slurring, like I said earlier, we reference the sirens for that. So it should be, in the beginning, a slow and smeared motion. I say I don't want it to be super bumpy. I want, ooh, like you're gonna feel it kind of hit that edge and then drop down. So we get really, really slow and smeared with the slurs, and eventually we work into making those a little bit more refined. I talk a lot about how the air stays really strong. The aperture is what changes the note. A lot of people say, use your air on your slurs. The air is what makes the slur happen. And I think students hear that and they go, oh, well, I just need to use more air. And what we're talking about is that they just need more air on every note. Like you have to use more air in general and then slurs are easier. But sometimes students misconstrue that when we say, you're overworking it, you're using your face too much. Let the air do the work. They think, oh, well, I have to huff at every single note, and then it gets really, really bumpy. And then my number one rule with slurs is you're not allowed to cheat and do it the wrong way. And so cheating and doing it the wrong way is using an air assist, and it's pressing on the face, and it's forcing it. And so what we get into with our slur progression, we start with our 2-note. And even with the 2-note, going back and forth, especially B flat up to F, kids will want to start pressing and they'll want to go, ah, and they'll want to huff at it, and then the F pops out and it's way, way louder. And I go, no, you're not allowed to do that. You have to use the lip strength to do it. And then we talked about which is easier for you, slurring down or slurring up. And normally slurring down is easier, but every now and then you get kind of like that odd kid that just slurs up really easily. And they're like, yeah, it's super easy. I'm like, well, that's great for you. Awesome, love it. And so we adapt our 2-note slur. In the beginning, it's half note, half note. We go to quarters, it moves faster, we go back and forth. Then we get to a 3-note. So once we end up working up to that B flat, as I get up to the B flat, we'll actually walk up to it. We'll do F, G, A, B flat to get up to it. But before that, we've been buzzing B flats for a couple weeks. They're pretty comfortable with it. And so we do a 3-note, which is low B flat, F, high B flat, F, low B flat. And if they don't get the top note, that's okay. Because a lot of kids are like, oh, I have to get the note. If I miss the note, I'm going to fail band or something. And I go, you just don't get the note. It's okay. Your face just isn't there yet. But I don't want you to force it and do it the wrong way and build a bad habit. Say, absolutely not. So we'll do it sometimes. And I go, someone over here forced. We can't do that. We got to do it again because you guys are pressing really hard and you're using your air. Like, it has to be smooth, guys. And we'll redo it. And then 4-note, obviously, we add the high D. When I start doing 4-note and 5-note, we'll start in 5th position and we'll start lower. So we'll go like low, like G flat, D flat, G flat, B flat, G flat, D flat, G flat. Because then our top note is B flat, and that was the top note in our 3-note. And so we do that in 5th position, and then we do it again in 4th, and then 3rd, and then 2nd, and 1st. And most of them can get it in 5th, and then most can get it in 4th, and then we start losing some in 3rd, and then in 2nd, and then 1st. But we keep doing it week after week, and then at the end of a couple weeks, most kids can do it in 1st position. Question, what's up?
Can you please demonstrate like the smooth slur and then like the forcing it one that you talked about?
Yeah. So air assist slur would be like, and a smooth would be.
Okay, so you're not like, because in another band we heard like he wanted the trumpets to like bend the pitch down and be like, wow, you don't want that per se.
No, in the very beginning, I kind of want that, like very beginning when we're doing. When we're kind of experimenting and learning what a slur is, then once we start going back and forth and we've been doing it for a while and they're comfortable with it and we start doing like, then it's like, okay, we want it nice and smooth, but yeah, we don't want the smear in there anymore. So that's like smooth versus smear.
And I think they wanted the smear for like a separate reason. They weren't like,
Yeah, it's a pitch bend. Yeah, is what they do for that. All right, taking some time. Got to move a little bit faster. So getting into articulation. When do we introduce articulation? When they're comfortable creating a steady sound, and we've done quite a bit of tone refinement. So we start with just the very beginning of the note, and we start on mouthpiece, and we talk about where the tongue touches, what part of the tongue we use, and that the tongue starts in place. We take the breath, the the tongue is in place, and you just pull the tongue away. And I show them, and I'll show them an air start, and I show them a tongue start. And I go, how am I doing that? And we kind of have a discussion. Oh, you're doing it with the lips, and you're doing it with this, and with the air. And we finally get to the tongue, and I have them say to, or just to, and just kind of like sing to. And so then we define, like, okay, scratch the tip of the tongue. That's the part you need to be using. Where does it touch? How does it move? All that stuff. And so we end up having a kind of call and response with the students, where when we get into tonguing, I go, what part of the tongue do we use? And they go, tip. Where do we touch? Top of the teeth. Does the tongue move fast or slow? Fast. Does it move up and down or back and forth? Up and down. Does it move a short distance or a long distance? Short distance. So with all these like kind of checking for understanding things, and then that helps us work into our tone box, which is getting a really solid note start. And again, same process of refinement when we do this. I go down, I listen to every student start with the tongue, because some of them will tongue way too hard and back up a ton of air behind it, and then they kind of have this explosion. Question?
So up to this point, like several weeks, you haven't gotten them to start with their tongue yet. It's just all air.
At this point, when we introduce articulation, this has probably been playing for like maybe 2 weeks, week and a half. So you'll see kind of in the breakdown, because this seems like it's really far in the process just because I've been talking about individual skills.
I just wanted to make sure,
That's why I did the breakdown of the whole year. So articulation continued while playing. Once we get them starting with the tongue, without the metronome, I just have them go, start with the tongue, and then just tongue a couple times in the middle and see what it feels like. So maybe like, just so that they can kind of self-analyze, self-assess, and practice a little bit so that they get an idea of what that should feel like. We talk about how the tongue shouldn't move too far. We don't want the tongue to go all the way down to the bottom of the mouth, because you're going to hear that in your sound. The tongue needs to move super quick. It needs to be really fast. And we have a discussion where we say, like, we can't see inside your mouth. We don't know. So when I analyze them, I go, okay, where do you feel like you're touching? And they tell me, and I go, okay, we'll try this. Or where do you feel like you're using, what part of the tongue do you feel like you're using to touch? Okay, maybe you're using the middle to the back of the tongue. Move forward, make sure you use the tip of the tongue. And then right here, quiz them every day. I use this. What part of the tongue do we use? Where do we touch? All this stuff. Does your air change? Does your sound change? Does your face move? Does your face change? All that stuff. And then avoid forcing the tongue too low. It's really easy for them to think like, oh, as a low brass player, it needs to be super open. We get a lot of extra throat tension. Like I went all the way through college and even through Carolina Crown marching drum corps, where I was like, throat tension was super crazy. My tongue was way too low in my mouth, and it created this extra throat tension that was just unnecessary, because I thought I was making this dark sound and it was facilitating better airflow, but really it was extra unnecessary tension. Okay, moving into that timeline. We start in August, so the first week is primarily just counting, note names, getting theory concepts down. We move into week 2, where we begin buzzing with that boba tea straw. And then in the third week, sometimes if we begin buzzing in that second week, sometimes by the end of that second week, we may start touching the instrument a little bit. Third week, we continue buzzing. We work on our steady sound. We work on adding the foot tap so that they are multitasking with the foot tap, and they've got a steady sound, and they're starting with the air. And then we start adding sirens. And then, at the end of week 3, that's once we've been sirening is when we start to kind of add the instrument a little bit. There's tons of information. I'm not going to read every single bit of it to you. But a lot of it is reinforcing previous skills while starting to introduce a little bit of new stuff. So once we've been on the instrument for about a week, we are starting to really refine that tone quality. We're identifying F versus B flat. We talk about what are those notes that are coming out of the bell. Like, oh, that's the F that you've learned about, that you've been note naming, that you've been like trying to do your note cards with. And then we start doing a little bit of like slurring between a little bit. Can you siren between those two? And then at the beginning of September, we start to add the tongue to the start. And then after about a couple days of adding the tongue to the start, we start adding the tongue in the middle. And a big thing about that is once we add the tongue to the start, we tongue everything at the very start. So it's not like, hey, here's a new skill, okay, we're going to put that away. It's we introduce tonguing at the start. Everything we do now, we are going to start with the tongue. So we work into week 2. Again, we start working on slurs, F to low B flat, back and forth, just trying to build that strength. And then we get into reading out of a method book. So we use musical mastery to kind of supplement getting into the first 5 notes, and then we use Rhythm Master or Essential Elements. Those are both really, really great books. So like I said, first 5 notes, learning the positions. So we'll do a lot of like, everything we do is such muscle memory based that it's like they need so many reps on the positions of back and forth. Show me first, then second, then third, then fourth. Now mix them up and quiz them on it. And then later into September, we introduce tonguing, and it's a ton of individual work. I would say articulation is probably the thing that I work the most on in terms of individual students. Like I go down the row the most on articulation out of any other skill that we do. Moving forward into October, we started expanding sirens up into high B flat, starting to read some more music, progressing through lip slurs. We start doing our mini scale of our first 5 notes. And then we start working, once they start to grasp the quarter notes in articulation, we start working into 8th notes in articulation. And this may be the end of October that we start working into doing 8th notes. But I will not move on to 8th notes until I feel like the quarter notes sound really solid. And they're doing it correctly, and they still have really great tone. So getting into November, we start walking up to high B flat, so we do that F, G, A, B flat, and we kind of finish out that B flat scale. They don't know it's a B flat scale yet, they just know it's a mini scale, and then a higher mini scale. We start doing the 3-note slur, and we start doing some chromatic work where it's like, as we learn the positions, I teach them the walk down. It's just, oh, you just walk down through all 7 positions. They don't know they're playing a chromatic scale. To them, it's just practicing their positions. And we work on F to low B flat, and then low B flat down to low F. And then this is sort of a sample lesson of what I would have in November. So I start, we're counting for a little bit, then we're on mouthpiece. We're buzzing F, we're doing F, slurring down to B flat, then we're buzzing B flat, going back and forth. On the instrument, it's I play, they play, back and forth. And a little bit of down the row, still checking tone quality, and then slurring between the F and B flat. And the bugles are the slurs. The slur thing in musical mastery is just called bugles. So we're playing through those bugles, through the slurs, because we've been playing the slurs, but they haven't really been reading it. So some of it is, I kind of swap out some days of we're looking at the notes and we're identifying that's F to B flat, E to A, E flat, A flat, and then other days we just play through it because there's other things we got to get through. And you can look through this whenever you scan the QR code because I don't want to read every single thing that's on there. In December, we continue trying to push up to high D. If they're not ready, they're not ready. Like my euphonium class this year took a while to get there. But then once they got there, because I waited and I didn't force them into playing high too soon, they sounded really good, and then they were able to get to high F by the end of the year, even though it took them a little bit longer to get there, because I didn't want to force them through that. Moving into January, this is where we do a lot of individual stuff with the kids, where they have like a black belt competition, like scale karate, and then they have band Olympics. So they kind of break off into their own goals of, oh, I want to learn a ton of scales. Oh, I want to learn a ton of lines and pass off all these lines. And then this is when we start introducing scales. So a lot of this is just kind of progressing as soon as they get ready as we go through February, March. At the end, when we get to May, they learn a small solo that's like 4 or 5 lines, and they play it for like a solo competition, and so we get to work a little bit on like solo ability. When I get to the very end, the advanced students, I start introducing vibrato to them and moving the jaw a little bit for that. But that's really only for like the really advanced students. All right, let's get into the beyond because I don't have a lot of time. So 7th and 8th grade, fixing summer regression is a really massive thing. I feel like a lot of students come back into 7th grade or after their first year and their face is gone. Like you have to reteach them that whole embouchure all over again, but it happens really, really quick. It's like a week or 2 and then they're set up good. But a lot of teachers just totally are like, oh, well, you finished your first year, so you sound great. Cool, let's go. And they create a bunch of bad habits. In middle school or in the next couple of years, they should be doing weekly sectionals. So the first 10 minutes of sectionals should be spent on fundamentals, just like you had in your homogeneous class. And then going into region music or whatever competitive music they have or concert music. Scale goals at the end of 8th grade, if they can play a 2-octave B flat scale, and then all the other, get your C, D flat, E flat, F, 2-octave F, 2-octave G, 2-octave A flat, working up to B flat, great. If they don't have B flat, that's okay. I'll take 2-octave F and I'll get them up to high B flat. So high school, what do I want them to know? Most important thing is just making a really, really great sound. And then there's some scales of what I would prefer for them to know. And then in high school, what do I give them, right? We should still be having sectionals, but some students get really ambitious and they want more stuff. And so in sectionals, I give them a routine packet and I talk about the power of routine, and I'll show that to you here in a second. I have a sample. It's not a routine packet, but what a routine packet should consist of. So I give them advanced studies, etudes out of the Rochu for lyrical etudes, and we work on learning them down an octave. That's all like phrasing, musicality. We work stuff out of the brass gym. We do chromatics, we do flow studies, we do lip slurs. Shawarma is great. Getting him to do those lip bends that you were talking about and learning that like micro intonation and that control. Because if you're really, really stiff, there's no way you're going to be able to do a lip bend. So lip bends tend to relax those really tight students up a lot. Getting into Arbin studies, doing multiple tonguing, stuff like that. And every student's at a different level. And so I kind of give them like this big packet and we just kind of work with them where they are. Getting into routine, like I said, most important thing, and what we've been trying to teach them since the very beginning is that in 6th grade we have a routine that we go through every day, and your practice should look like that whenever you go home. So here are some resources of where you can find some. Dr. Lewis has a really great one called Routine 1 on his website. And then I found this other website whenever I was making this presentation, and it's phenomenal. They do... he creates like a practice chart for the All-State music for Texas. He has routines, he has solos. It's a lot of really good stuff. This is that practice or that routine chart that I made for my students of like, you should have breathing, buzzing, long tones, flow studies, flexibility, articulation, technique, and then your music. And like, these are your goals. Like, this is what you should be thinking about while you play all these. And then this is maybe like what you would be doing, right? Like touching quarters, then eighths, then triplets, stuff like that. This is a list of solos that I would recommend for middle school, high school students. Middle school students can just play out of like solo books. Like the solo books are great. The trombone gyms are awesome, and a lot of those festival books have plenty of really solid solos that are really appropriate for middle schoolers. And then this is the last slide. These are resources. So method books that I recommend are Essential Elements or The Rhythm Master for 6th graders. And then supplemental stuff is Musical Mastery. This is a link to one of my Google Drives of baritone resources. So that has a freshman fundamentals routine that I started whenever I was in high school that Dr. Lewis gave me. It has routine 1. It has some extra stuff that I got from Claudia Taylor Johnson when I student taught there. It also has some additional resources that I put together from the brass gym and stuff like that. So that is chock full of baritone stuff. And then this presentation is in a PDF. And that. So again, thank you guys so much for having me today. I hope you got something from this clinic. I enjoyed presenting to you guys, and it was an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Are you able to stay for a couple of minutes if people have...
I can.
So if you have